Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist, and today I want to talk about discipline, which is defined as control gained by enforcing obedience or order. So that's control that you get by enforcing obedience and order. That doesn't sound like a barrel of laughs to me. It's no wonder people are struggling with this concept. But I get it. Of course, when you know the chaos and the misery that feeling so out of control around food can bring, you may long to just be the kind of person who's disciplined or regimented about their food. The word, I think, is a bit problematic, especially when we're thinking about things like control and obedience, where when it comes to the binge, there's such a part of that, the energy of the binge, which is about a big F you, there's a rebel in there. There's a desire for freedom and to break out of all the control. So we see that the more tightly people try to control, quite often that triggers more binge eating. This is why the concept of self-discipline is problematic. But what does that mean? Does that mean that if you're someone who struggles with binge eating, you can't strive for self-discipline? I think if we can just soften it a bit and use a bit of a reframe. So I prefer the idea of self-management. We need to feel like we can manage our behavior, manage our experiences, and cope. It's the idea of being able to trust that when we say to ourselves that we're going to do something, that we're then able to follow through and do it. The problem is when you have made promises to yourself over and over again about how you're going to do it differently from this moment on, and really meant it with every fiber of your being, and then you don't manage to do that, week after week, month after month, year after year, like it just erodes your self-trust. And I've seen it destroy people's self-esteem. Now, it's sometimes said that there are two types of people in the world. There are marathoners and there are sprinters. The marathoners, they just keep at this steady pace. They go the long distance. They're reliable. They're consistent. And then you've got the sprinters, and I relate to being a sprinter. We have this burst of energy. We decide on something and we might get excited and go like, right, we're going all in on this. But then we keep collapsing and we have to get up again, and we push forward and then we collapse, and we get up and we push forward and we collapse, and we feel like we're not actually getting anywhere. I used to think the goal was to become a marathoner. And then I heard Usain Bolt being interviewed once, and he said the reason why he chose sprinting over long distance running was because he was lazy. And that always tickled me. The idea of this Olympic gold medalist considering himself lazy because he was a sprinter, not a marathoner. Because the thing is, as a sprinter, is we need to stop. We are start, stop people. It's kind of how we're wired. However, it doesn't have to be as extreme as you might be experiencing it. If you expect, and this is the trap people fall into, that you should be able to just get up and sprint forever, you're setting yourself up. That's the unrealistic expectation. However, if you expect that you are someone who stops, when you stop, you can use that time to properly recover, and you will start again much sooner. Because if you're going all at it, let's say, let's use an example of journaling. So if you say, right, I'm going to start journaling, and I'm going to journal every day, and I'm going to do this number of pages, and I've bought the perfect notebook and the lovely pen that I'm going to write with, and then you do it for a few days or a couple of weeks, and then you miss a few days, it falls away, and you go, I knew it. Like, that's another thing I couldn't stick to. Or maybe this shows up in other areas if you are trying to practice the principles of intuitive eating and you manage to do it for a week or two and you're like, this is great. But then you feel like you mess up or you binge or something like that, and you just go into that state of collapse and despair. If when you stop, you start judging, shaming, blaming yourself, you will stay stopped for much, much longer. It impedes the replenishing process of needing to stop. When we're just judging ourselves, it's exhausting. When we're turning it into this battle with ourselves, we're losing energy that we could be using to pick ourselves back up again. So when you expect that you will stop, that you are not a marathoner, the stops become much shorter, the sprints become much easier, and you start to experience that sense of consistency. I saw myself as the most inconsistent person. I never finished anything I started. And I just don't see myself like that anymore. Yes, I can be prone to getting excited about something, going all in, and then discarding it. But when things matter to me and when I'm much more aware of my process, and I know that there's going to be times where I just want to throw in the towel and that is part of the process, that's when I can keep going and keep coming back to it. And here's another reason, a really crucial one, I think, why many people struggle with this self-management thing, especially if you're someone who binges. I'm going to put it like this. Let's say someone who doesn't really know you is giving you all this advice about what you should do. And it's things that you already kind of know and that you've been struggling to do. How are you going to feel in that moment when this random person who doesn't really know you is trying to tell you what to do? There's going to be part of you that's just going to want to go like, no, like, shut up. I'm not listening to you. I know this stuff. This is not helpful. Well, we're made up of different parts of us that have different wants and needs. So there is a part of you, yes, that longs for this idea of self-discipline, to be that person that sees value in being that person. And there is another part or parts of you that's like, no, I want to be free. I want to feel like I'm making choices. So when these parts they're sort of disconnected, it's a lack of personal integration. We tend to think that we should just be one part, and we're not. We're made up of lots of different parts. But if we don't bring those parts in closer, this is where we end up feeling in conflict with ourselves. So the person that doesn't really know you, who's telling you what you should do, is like one part of you, the disciplinarian in you, that's saying, right, tomorrow we're only going to eat this and we're going to do this exercise and it doesn't matter, no excuses, all of that, right? Watches all the YouTube videos about discipline and mindset and that kind of stay hard type thing. But then the next day when you get up and the disciplinarian part of you is much quieter, and the other part, the more rebellious part that doesn't want to follow the strict regime that you were setting for yourself the day before, that part is active. It can feel like, even though it was technically you last night saying this is what we're going to do, it can feel like this external control. And if we feel like we're being controlled externally, that primal drive for freedom can kick off. It's like the rebellious teen who just wants to do the thing that their parents disapprove of. And it's actually like they want the tattoo, but then the parents say it's okay, and then they don't want the tattoo anymore. It's almost like this part seems to actively want to rebel and prove that it is free. So when we're acknowledging there's all these different parts of us and we don't like certain parts, if you push those parts away, if you judge them and shame yourself for those parts being there, they get pushed into the background. And then they're there in the background pulling the strings outside of your awareness. And now it feels like you're doing that self-sabotage thing. There are no bad parts in you. There might be parts that seem to cause more problems and parts that might be more challenging. But this is what being a human being is. We have these different parts. We have kindness in us and we have capacity for cruelty. We can be jealous and we can build each other up. Like all these different parts exist. And when we can listen to even the quote unquote negative parts and just acknowledge them and have compassion for them, they die down. I think the fear is if I listen to the parts that I don't like, then they're going to take over. But actually what I found is the opposite is true. When you listen to the different parts and these conflicts going on you with sort of that curiosity, compassion and understanding, the part of you that's able to observe, it's like the class settles down. It's like you're a teacher in a class full of unruly kids. They all just settle down a bit. And now you can just be firm and fair and okay, what is it that we need to do for the greater good of the whole class? I don't know where this analogy's come from. It wasn't planned. I'm not even sure if it works. And the last point I want to make about self-management is this idea of, and you will have heard this phrase before, no doubt, progress, not perfection. If you think you want to be more disciplined in order to just become this kind of person, you're missing the whole process. So people will often say to me, oh, you're so disciplined because you do yoga every day. That yoga started off as a 2-minute stretch each day. And the task or what I set for myself is that I step on the mat every day. So the other night, I didn't want to get on the mat and do my yoga. My back was hurting. I didn't trust that I wasn't going to make it worse. And so I just went and laid on the yoga mat for a bit and did a couple of half-assed stretches. And that was fine. I got on the mat. And other times, most days, I'll do something longer. But the idea is, I'm not saying that the day that I do more is better than the day that I just lie on the mat. because it's about the process of getting on the mat. The black and white thinking just wants to be there already. So if we're talking about binge eating recovery, for example, it just wants to be at the end already fixed. But in order to continue making progress, it's the process that matters. So you need to learn how to give yourself a pat on the back when you do something well. Being able to acknowledge just the process, just the showing up, regardless of the outcome, that will breed greater capacity for self-management, to feel like you can keep going. If you're a sprinter, you're still going to have times where you're just like, stop, enough, I'm checking out for a bit, and then you come back when you're ready. So in summary, there's just the 3 things that I want you to take away. Number 1, it is okay to stop, start. Expect it. Expect that you will stop anything that you start to do, and then you will learn how to manage those stopping times. Secondly, there are no bad parts. There are lots of parts to you, and in order for us to be able to manage ourselves, we need to listen to and be interested in and be non-judgmental of all those parts. That's how we manage them. And the last one is to prioritize the process over the outcome. Progress, not perfection. Anyway, hope that was useful, and I'll see you on the next video.